The arrow flew before the sun rose. It cut through the cold air in total silence. A massive buffalo stood only a few steps away. One wrong move, and the hunter would be crushed. The ground was dry. The wind was wrong, and the animal had already seen him. Then, the hunter released the string. The arrow struck. The buffalo roared and charged. And for a moment, it looked like the hunt would end in death. But this was not just any hunter. He belonged to a people who have survived this way for nearly 50,000 years. And what happened next would shock the modern world. Because when scientists finally found them, they realized something impossible. They had never stopped living in the Stone Age. Long before cities, long before kings, long before pyramids or empires. There were people walking the dry lands of East Africa with nothing but bows, wooden arrows, and fire. They did not build walls. They did not plant crops. They did not store food for winter. They hunted. They gathered. They survived. Today, they are known as the Hadza. They live near Lake Eyasi in northern Tanzania, not far from the Great Plains where early humans once walked. The land is harsh. It is hot in the day and cold at night. Water disappears without warning. Animals move like shadows across the grass. And yet, the Hadza remain. Small groups. Around 1,000 people in total. No chiefs. No rulers. No armies. No prisons. No written language. Just families, moving with the land like their ancestors did thousands of years ago. Scientists believe the Hadza way of life is one of the closest living examples to how early humans survived tens of thousands of years ago. Their tools are simple. Their homes are made of grass and branches. Their lives follow the rhythm of the sun. But surviving like this is not easy. Every day begins with hunger. At dawn, the men prepare their bows. The strings are pulled tight. The arrows are tipped with poison made from desert plants. Not magic, not myth, just knowledge passed down through generations. The women gather digging sticks and woven baskets. They search for berries, baobab fruit, and wild tubers buried deep beneath the soil. Children learn early. By age 5, they know how to spot tracks in the dirt. By age 8, they can climb trees for honey. By 10, they understand something most modern people never will. If you do not work, you do not eat. There are no supermarkets, no refrigerators, no second chances. And yet, something strange happens when researchers spend time with the Hadza. They laugh. They joke. They sing at night around the fire. Despite living in one of the hardest environments on Earth, they show low levels of stress compared to many people in cities. No alarm clocks. No traffic. No bills. Just survival. But survival comes with danger. The land around Lake Eyasi is shared with lions, hyenas, leopards, snakes, and elephants. A simple mistake can mean death. A wrong step in tall grass. A missed shot. A hidden predator. And then there are the modern threats. Tourists arrive with cameras. Researchers arrive with notebooks. Governments draw borders on land that the Hadza never believed could be owned. Farmers move closer. Water becomes scarce. Slowly, the world begins pressing in. The Hadza have survived ice ages. They survived droughts that wiped out others. They survived migrations of stronger tribes. But can they survive the modern world? To understand that question, you must go back further. Back to the beginning. 50,000 years ago, early humans were spreading across Africa. They hunted in small groups, just like the Hadza do today. They used simple stone tools. They relied on memory, not writing. Most human societies changed over time. They discovered farming. They built permanent homes. They created governments and armies. They fought wars over land and power. But the Hadza did not follow that path. Why? Anthropologists have studied this mystery for decades. The Hadza never fully adopted agriculture. They never became a kingdom. They never built monuments. Instead, they kept moving, living lightly, taking only what they needed, sharing food equally inside the camp. No one stores extra meat. If a hunter brings down a large animal, everyone eats, even the hunter's enemies. Because tomorrow, the roles may reverse. And in a land this unforgiving, selfishness can destroy a group. This system kept them alive for thousands of years. But there is something else that makes the Hadza different. Their language. The Hadza language contains clicking sounds, unlike most languages spoken nearby. It is considered unique, not closely related to surrounding Bantu languages. Some researchers believe it may hold clues to ancient human speech patterns. It is a living echo of the past. But echoes can fade. As more children are exposed to outside schools in nearby towns, the language weakens. And with language goes memory. Now return to that morning hunt. The buffalo had charged. The hunter moved quickly, not running straight, but to the side. The poison on the arrow would take time to work. The Hadza do not chase in panic. They follow tracks calmly, patiently, sometimes for hours, sometimes for days. They watch for signs. Blood drops, broken grass, heavy breathing in the distance. The hunt is not about speed. It is about endurance. And humans are the best endurance hunters the world has ever known. That buffalo eventually fell, not because the hunter was stronger, but because he could outlast it. This is how early humans survived. This is how the Hadza still survive. But something happened recently that shook their future. Satellite images showed expanding farms creeping closer to traditional Hadza hunting grounds. Outside investors began fencing land. Water access points were restricted. Without land, hunting becomes impossible. Without hunting, the Hadza cannot live the way they always have. Some members have already moved toward small villages. Some now were donated clothing instead of animal skins. Some trade labor for maize. Change is coming. And not all change is slow. In one season of extreme drought, animals disappeared from key areas. Water holes dried up. The Hadza were forced to move farther than usual. Tension rose. For the first time in years, camps split over access to shrinking resources. It was a warning. Nature and modern borders were squeezing them at the same time. Researchers documenting the tribe began asking a question few wanted to answer. If the Hadza disappear, what happens to the last living window into our ancient past? Are we watching the final chapter of a 50,000-year-old way of life? Or will they adapt once again, as they always have? Back in the camp, after the buffalo fell, the meat was carried home. Children ran to meet the hunters. Fires were lit. The smell of roasting meat filled the dry air. Laughter echoed under the stars. It looked timeless, unchanged. But in the distance, beyond the hills, engines could be heard. Vehicles moving across newly claimed land. And one elder, sitting quietly by the fire, watched the dark horizon. He had seen drought. He had seen sickness. He had seen outsiders come and go. But this felt different. Because this time, the land itself was being taken. And without the land, there would be no hunt. And without the hunt, there would be no Hadza. As the fire burned low and the stars stretched across the African sky, a young boy asked his father a simple question. Will we always live like this? The father did not answer. Because for the first time in 50,000 years, he did not know. And just beyond the hills, survey markers were already being placed in the ground, marking the beginning of something the Hadza had never faced before, a future they could not track, a threat they could not outrun, and a decision that would change everything. By sunrise, the markers were everywhere. Thin wooden sticks pushed into the earth, bright plastic tape tied to thorn trees, straight lines cutting across land that had never known straight lines. The Hadza woke up to a world that looked the same, but felt different. The wind still moved across the dry grass. The birds still called from the acacia trees. Lake Iasi still shimmered in the distance. But something invisible had changed. The land had been divided, and the Hadza had never believed land could belong to anyone. For thousands of years, their survival depended on movement. If berries were gone in one place, they walked. If animals moved north, they followed. If water dried up, they shifted camps. No fences, no borders, no ownership. The land was not property. It was life. Now, farmers from nearby regions were expanding. Herds of cattle grazed in areas once filled with wild game. Fields of maize replaced open hunting grounds. Water holes were dug deeper and claimed. And for the first time, the Hadza were told, "This is not your land." Anthropologists tried to explain what was happening. Governments were creating official land titles. Investors were buying large areas. Tourism companies wanted controlled zones. To outsiders, it was development. To the Hadza, it was confusion. Because how can you sell something that has no walls? How can you own something that moves with the seasons? One afternoon, a small group of Hadza hunters followed fresh tracks. Impala, good meat. The tracks led across a dry ridge and into an area they had hunted many times before. But this time, they found something new. A fence. Wires stretched across open land. Not strong enough to stop a determined hunter, but strong enough to send a message. The men stood quietly. No anger. No shouting. Just silence. The animals could cross it, but they could not. Because crossing it could bring trouble. Arrests. Fines. Conflict they did not want. They turned back. That night, the camp felt heavy. Children still played. Fires still burned. But the hunters had returned empty-handed. And hunger is louder than fear. Researchers who had worked with the Hadza for years began recording changes. More families were visiting nearby villages. Some were accepting government food aid. Some children were attending school. Clothing changed. Plastic containers replaced carved wooden bowls. Metal tools replaced stone blades. Change is not always bad, but fast change can break something fragile. The Hadza social system is simple. No chiefs. No fixed leaders. Decisions are made through discussion. If someone disagrees strongly, they leave and join another camp. Freedom is everything. But now, outside rules were forcing choices they had never needed to make. One government meeting invited Hadza representatives. The idea was to help them integrate. Farming training, permanent housing, access to clinics, education programs. To officials, it was progress. To some Hadza elders, it felt like a trap. Farming means staying in one place. Staying in one place means fences. Fences mean limits. Limits mean dependency. And dependency means losing the hunt. One elder spoke softly through a translator. "We are not poor," he said. "We have food. We have land. We have each other." The room was quiet, because by modern standards, they had almost nothing. But by their own standards, they had everything they needed. Meanwhile, the drought worsened. Lake Icy shrank further. Animals migrated earlier than usual. The honey season was weak. For the Hadza, honey is not just food. It is energy. It is celebration. It is shared. Young boys climb tall baobab trees, using smoke to calm bees. They hang high above the ground, risking falls for sweet reward. But this year, many hives were empty. The balance was shifting. Scientists studying climate patterns noticed rising temperatures across East Africa. Rain cycles were changing. The Hadza had survived drought before. But combined with shrinking land, the pressure was new. One evening, a group of young Hadza men returned from a nearby town. They carried bags of maize flour. They had worked for it. Digging, carrying, building. They were tired in a different way. Not from tracking animals, but from following instructions. One of them spoke quietly by the fire. "It is easier," he said. "You work one day, you eat. No tracking for hours. No waiting for poison to take effect. No long walks. Just labor for pay." The older hunters listened. Because easier can slowly replace tradition. And once replaced, it rarely returns. A foreign documentary crew arrived weeks later. Cameras, drones, microphones. They wanted to film the last hunter-gatherers. The phrase itself felt heavy. Last, as if the story was already ending. The crew filmed hunts. They filmed children playing with handmade bows. They filmed women digging for tubers. But they also filmed the fences, the cattle, the drying lake. And one powerful scene stood out. A young Hadza boy stood beside a tourist vehicle. He stared at his reflection in the shiny metal door. For a moment, the camera captured something quiet but deep. Two worlds facing each other. One moving fast, one standing still, and neither fully understanding the other. Not all change came from outside. Some tension grew within. A disagreement broke out between two camps over access to a water source. In the past, camps simply moved apart. But with fewer options available, distance was harder. Voices rose. Old friendships strained. The land that once allowed freedom now felt smaller. The Hadza identity has always been built on independence. No one tells them where to go. No one controls their choices. But when options shrink, independence shrinks too. Anthropologists worried. Because history shows what happens when hunter-gatherers lose territory. They are absorbed. They disappear. Not always through violence, but through slow change. Through schools that replace language. Through jobs that replace hunts. Through food aid that replaces gathering. Through good intentions that erase ancient systems. One night, under a sky full of stars, the elders gathered. The fire crackled low. Hyenas laughed in the distance. The oldest among them spoke. "Our fathers hunted here, and their fathers before them. And before them," he pointed to the dark horizon. "The land remembers us. But do they remember us?" He meant the outsiders, the officials, the investors, the world watching through screens. The Hadza had lived quietly for tens of thousands of years. They did not ask to be modern symbols. They did not ask to be called ancient. They only asked to live. But now they faced a choice no generation before them had faced. Adapt quickly, or risk fading. Then came the news that shook everything. A large section of land near a key hunting route had been officially leased. Legal documents signed. Boundaries mapped. Access restricted. The area included one of the most reliable dry season water points. Without it, survival during harsh months would become nearly impossible. When the hunters walked to confirm the news, they saw machinery. Metal posts. Workers digging deeper wells for cattle. The water that once belonged to no one now belonged to someone. And for the first time in memory, the Hadza could not simply move away, because there was nowhere left to go. That night, no one sang. No one joked. The children sensed the silence. The fire burned low, and one young hunter stared at his bow, a tool unchanged for thousands of years. Simple, powerful, useless against paperwork. As the stars stretched across the sky, a question hung in the air heavier than smoke. Can a people survive if the world decides they are outdated? In the distance, engines roared again, closer this time. And at dawn, a government vehicle was seen approaching the camp, bringing news that would force the Hadza to make a decision they had avoided for 50,000 years. Stay and fight for their way of life, or step into a future they never chose. The vehicle stopped. The door opened, and the man stepping out carried documents that could change everything. The man stepped out of the vehicle slowly. Dust rose around his shoes. In his hands were papers. Not weapons, not chains, just papers. But those papers held more power than spears ever had. The camp was silent. Children stopped playing. Women paused beside the fire. Hunters stood still, bows resting at their sides. The visitor spoke through a translator. The government was offering something, he said. Official recognition. Protected land. But there were conditions. Boundaries would be fixed. Movement would be limited to marked areas. Certain hunting zones would remain closed. Some families would need to register. Some children would need to attend school. It was, he explained, a partnership. The words sounded simple. But nothing about this moment was simple. For 50,000 years, the Hadza had answered to the land. Now they were being asked to answer to lines on a map. The elders gathered beneath an acacia tree. They listened. They asked questions. They spoke softly among themselves. There was no single leader to decide. That was their way. Freedom meant shared voice. Some younger members were curious. Protected land meant security. It meant outsiders could not simply take more. It meant fewer fences in the future. But it also meant change. Rules. Registration. Fixed camps. One elder finally asked the question no one wanted to say aloud. If we accept, will we still be Hadza? The translator hesitated. There was no easy answer. For days, discussion continued. Some families quietly packed belongings, preparing to move closer to towns. Others refused to consider it. The hunters walked the shrinking land one more time. They touched familiar trees. They checked old honey sites. They followed animal tracks as they had since childhood. Everything looked the same, but it felt like standing inside a closing circle. Researchers watching this moment understood its weight. Very few hunter-gatherer societies remain in the world. Fewer still live mostly by hunting and gathering without farming. The Hadza were not just a community. They were a living link to early human history. Their daily life held clues about how our ancestors cooperated, how they shared food, how they solved conflict without kings or prisons, how they survived ice ages and droughts. But now, survival required a different skill. Negotiation, paperwork, legal systems, skills their ancestors never needed. One evening, something unexpected happened. A hunt succeeded in spectacular fashion. A large kudu was brought down after a long chase. The entire camp gathered. Meat was shared equally. Laughter returned. Children danced around the fire. For a few hours, nothing felt threatened. It was proof. Proof that the old way still worked. Proof that the land still gave life. But even as smoke rose into the night sky, headlights could be seen far off in the distance. The modern world does not disappear when ignored. It waits. The final meeting was called at sunrise. The government representative returned. This time, he did not speak first. He listened. An elder stepped forward. His face was lined by sun and time. Our fathers walked freely, he said. We do not want fences. We do not want to be poor farmers. But we also do not want to disappear. There it was. The truth. They were not fighting progress. They were fighting erasure. After hours of discussion, a fragile agreement was reached. Certain areas would be officially protected as Hadza land. Hunting would remain legal inside those zones. No large farms would be built there. In exchange, boundaries would be respected. Some cooperation with nearby communities would continue. It was not perfect. It was not ancient. But it was survival. Years passed. The agreement slowed the loss of land, though it did not stop pressure entirely. Some Hadza children now attend school during parts of the year. Some adults trade honey or handmade bows for goods. But many still hunt at dawn. Many still gather tubers from dry soil. Many still sit around the fire at night telling stories with clicking sounds that echo an ancient past. Scientists continue to study them, not as museum pieces, but as living people. And what they discover is powerful. The Hadza show strong social bonds. Food is shared widely. No one accumulates great wealth. No one commands an army. Decisions remain collective. In a world filled with stress, competition, and constant noise, their lifestyle offers a quiet question. Did progress cost us something? Not technology, not medicine, but simplicity, connection, balance. The Hadza are not frozen in time. They are not untouched by the modern world. They use metal arrowheads now. Some wear sandals. Some carry radios. They are human beings adapting, as humans always have. But the core remains. Hunt, gather, share, move. Live with the land, not above it. One morning, a young boy stood beside his father at the edge of camp. The boy held a small bow. The father pointed to fresh tracks in the dirt. Impala, the same lesson passed down for thousands of years. Walk softly, the father said. Watch the wind. The boy nodded. In that moment, time folded. It did not matter how many vehicles drove beyond the hills. It did not matter how many documents were signed. What mattered was this: a child learning to read the earth, a tradition still breathing. But nothing is guaranteed. Climate change continues to threaten water sources. Population growth around them continues. Global attention can protect, but it can also attract pressure. The Hadza future remains uncertain. Yet one truth stands strong. They are not relics. They are not stuck in the past. They are survivors. From the Ice Age to the Internet Age. From stone tools to satellite maps. They have endured. And maybe the greatest mystery is not how they survived unchanged for 50,000 years. Maybe the real mystery is this: in a world that moves faster every day, who is truly lost? The ones who kept the old ways, or the ones who forgot them? Thanks for watching. Kindly like, comment, and subscribe for more historical documentary.